Well, Shane, one reason I really wanted to reach out to you and have you on the show, Lane Kiffin doing Lane Kiffin things this offseason, was recently a guest on the Rich Eisen show. And somehow the conversation turned to NIL and all this money Tennessee's paying for all these players.
It's just not fair.
Last year it was Texas A&M he's mad at. Now he shifted it to Tennessee. Let's kick it over to Lane Kiffin to bitch and moan a little bit more.
I had Coach Saban on, and I'll ask you the same thing I asked him about the comments from your colleague in Clemson, from Dabo Swinney, that he believes that what's going on with NIL, that college football is headed for a reckoning, to get blown up is the word that he used. Would you agree with that assessment, Lane Kiffin?
I read that. I actually texted him, good job on it, because it is. I'm for that the kids make money. It's just there's no, I said it from day one, put no salary cap in the NFL. How does that work? And different teams have different money, and then there's no real contracts on a lot of it. They're not necessarily locked in, so technically everybody could be a free agent every year. And really, if you're think how messed up the system is. If you're a great player, you're Bryce Young after the national championship last year, you should go in the portal. Even if you want to stay at Alabama, because all you'll do is drive up your price there, because then the collectives there will suddenly come up with a lot of money from Alabama people to keep you. So what would any player do that could opt into a free agency every year? They would do it, test the market, and get the most they could. We have started to see a few at places. I think, it's not, they weren't unhappy. They just figured this out. Like, hey, I can maybe come back where I'm at, but let me see what I can get paid. So, and you're going to have all these locker room dynamics where now you're reading, you got a player coming into school over there in East Tennessee that, for $8 million, hasn't played it down, and you got a locker room saying, wait, now what if the guy doesn't play? How's that going to work? And then how is the donor going to feel that paid all that money when the guy's not playing? And so you got a lot of things that haven't been figured out at all.
All right, Shane, so because he's calling you out, basically he's calling you out personally, Cousin Shane.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
For Tennessee putting in all this money to get players, which is completely legal now. I don't know, but let me ask you seriously about one thing he did kind of hit on here, which is an unknown for all of us. What do you think that locker room dynamic is going to be when you've got a potentially multimillionaire in that locker room? Do you think that changes anything in the Tennessee, and not just Tennessee, but across the SEC?
No, because this isn't. We're not just now giving money out, Mike. We're not just now giving clout out. When you think Tua rolled up into Tuscaloosa and people treated him just like another player? You know what I'm saying? He was a superstar before he arrived to campus. So to say that it's going to be different now that they have money is the dumbest thing I ever heard of. In fact, I like when I hear Lane come out with these weeping comments, and he's not alone. There's other coaches. I put myself in Lane's shoes. If I had boosters reaching out and getting a quarterback that I wanted, paying $8 million, I would not be saying a damn thing. It's just like the whole fainting goat thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like they didn't get that taken away from them, so you didn't hear him out here saying, well, they should relook at this because it just isn't fair. No, it's Lane's. That's just who he is, and it's not happening at his university. Maybe it is just at a smaller scale, but, this is the SEC, brother. You're going to have to buy in because this is the next chapter of college football. Until they put some bumpers on this thing and slow it down, it's the wild, wild west out there.
Yeah, and, I think I discussed this with you at the time, Shane, but you may have forgotten it. When it was last July when NIL, officially became legal, and there was websites set up where you could register. You could kind of pick the athlete you want, and there's a price tag for how much their time costs. And I believe Matt Corral, it was either $10,000 or $20,000 an hour, and I said, Matt Corral's never gonna be on this show. You know what I mean? So hey, it wasn't an issue for Matt Corral, yet it's an issue for Tennessee's quarterback. It just doesn't make much sense. And I get, Lane Kiffin's not the only one. He just seems to be the most vocal when it comes to it. And I guarantee you, Shane, if Ole Miss and their boosters were leading the way on NIL, this would not be an issue for old Lane Kiffin. You know what?
Yeah, that's exactly right. These guys are watching it slip away. I'll never forget, growing up in the 90s, there was programs that had no trouble getting players to come to. Knoxville's a great place to play, but a lot of these kids coming to Knoxville weren't coming because Knoxville's pretty. They were coming because the facilities were legit. Mm-hmm. We were always top notch. We had high boosters. These guys were getting paid. Athens, same thing. You see these teams that have always been competitive when it comes to recruiting, and then the SEC channel comes on, and then all of a sudden we don't have the prettiest campus anymore. We're competing with all 14 teams, So that's just the evolution of college football. And then so it made it even playing field. Well, now the NIL's coming out, and you're seeing some of these guys take advantage of it. I fully expect either A, they do some sort of governing on it, or B, these other universities start paying their players. So it's either buy in or get out. So yeah. I think that's what's going to happen here, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. We got one more clip, Shane, when it comes to NIL. These were from a couple of days ago, but sticking on that theme and carrying over to our conversation in a moment here with Mike Morgan. Mark Stoops was asked about NIL, and he kind of went a step further. He went a little heated here. He's right there with you. Maybe some regulation, or maybe those Kentucky boosters. Maybe they need to sell a little bit more bourbon this year.
Money that kind of comes. What are you in position to do in terms of just encouraging that?
That's a great question, because I was about to answer you. What am I, allowed to do is not much. You know what I mean? So, accept, encourage, like you said, because I think, early on there was a lot of questions. Heck, I had questions. I still do. I've asked to meet with compliance and Mitch and let's get on the same page and let's do what we can. Because what you're seeing is some doing more than others. I mean, that's obvious. And I think if you asked most coaches, and I've started to see some SEC coaches and others, discussing all of our concerns on our players, guys that are here, we all are happy that they're able to profit from their name, image, and likeness. They do a lot for us. And with that, they should be able to earn some money. I think we all are a bit concerned about let's just put a collective together with $10 million and buy recruits. I mean, let's buy 25 free agents a year. And that, again, is that really what we got into this for? Or did we get into it to support the Chris Rodriguez's and others and guys that have done so much for us and work really hard, you know what I mean? Or is it, let's just get a collective, let's get 15 wealthy boosters together, put it in a collective, which is legal. I want to make that clear to everybody that wants to put it in a collective. That is totally legal. You're just essentially putting that money in for futures. Much different than people say, hey, I'm going to advertise for the Masters next year or the Super Bowl next year. You don't know who's going to be in it, but you're allowed to put that in there. So that is totally legal. And whether I want that or not, or whether our administration wants it, that's not our choice. It's legal. And I think you see some universities and some SEC schools taking full advantage of that. And then you see others that are not, because there's only so much money to go around, and where are you going to put that money and all those things. So it's changing the landscape. And anytime you make drastic changes like that, there are certainly some unintended consequences that come with these decisions. Again, I think it's a positive, but I'd like to see some federal help or some federal legislation on the total pay for play that's going on right now. That was supposed to be legal, but it's certainly not. being enforced, and it's 100% happening out there. So what are we going to do about it? Another thing is I'm always going to fight the fight. Whatever it is, we're going to overcome it, we're going to adapt, and we're going to be successful at it. This piece, we need a lot of people to get on the same page with this.
So I just thought that was great, Shade, and it's not like we're just sitting here picking on Lane Kiffin. He's just the one that's most vocal. All these coaches are dealing with this, but it's all about, you're going to adapt to the current rules, or you're going to fall by the wayside. And in the SEC, it's just so damn competitive. Anything you can use to help your program, you just basically got to go all in on it. You know what?
Yeah, it is, man, and it is uncharted territory, and we don't know how this thing's going to play out. I mean, to sit here and act like we know what 5 years from now exactly how this NIL is going to work is crazy. This is getting rolled out, and a lot of people said, well, it's not going to affect recruiting. Well, if you really thought the NIL was not going to affect recruiting, you have another damn thing coming. You know what I'm saying? Like what they say, I'll sell you beachfront property in Arizona or something like that. I don't know. I think there's a song like that, but oceanfront property, that's it. You know what I'm saying? It's just, we knew that this was going to be part of the NIL, and the programs that grasp that early were going to be the ones that succeed. And that's the ones that you're not hearing complain. Do you hear Nick Saban out here complaining about the NIL? Kirby Smart getting on a loudspeaker and preaching about the NIL? Do you hear Chip Kelly getting, there's all kinds of programs, even up north. They're not bitching about the NIL because their boosters are paying these players to come to their campus.